This radio program has been rated R for ridiculous. All listeners must be accompanied by their spirit guides.
You're listening to Haunted Voices Radio.
This is Haunted Voices. Join your host, Todd Bates, as he takes you on a journey into the unknown. Haunted Voices Radio. It's a trip into the unknown. Chat with us live where even more interaction is provided. And now, here's your host and founder, Todd Bates.
And a good evening, one and all. Welcome, Haunted Voices Radio Live. Let'sTalkRadio.net. That's where each and every one of you fine folks need to be right now. Join us in chat. You can log in right there through Facebook, Twitter as a guest. Get in there. It's going to be an amazing program we've got planned here for you tonight. Of course, joining us for this 2-hour special, none other than Mark Nesbitt and Dr. Katherine Ramsland. We're going to be talking some haunted crime scenes this evening. I bet you didn't think of that, did you? Great stuff coming up here. Those of you that may be having some difficulties finding the chat room, it's that little bubble right there in the lower right-hand corner. You can't miss it. Just click on that. Real simple to log in. And those of you already in there, absolutely fantastic. Welcome to the program. Now, as stated, tonight our guests are Mark Nesbitt, Dr. Katherine Ramsland, and Mark was a National Park Service Ranger historian for 5 years at Gettysburg before starting his own research and writing company. Since then, he has published over 20 books, including the nationally award-winning Ghosts of Gettysburg series, 2 Ghost Hunters Field Guides, and Civil War Ghost Trails. Now, his stories have been seen on the History Channel, A&E, Discovery Channel, the Travel Channel, Unsolved Mysteries, and numerous regional television shows, and of course heard on Coast to Coast AM and regional radio. In 1994, he created the commercially successful Ghost of Gettysburg Candlelight Walking Tours. Now, our other guest, last but definitely not least, by any stretch of the imagination, Dr. Katherine Ramsland is a professor of forensic psychology at DeSales University in Pennsylvania. She has published over 1,000 articles, stories, and reviews, and get this, 62 books, including The Psychology of Death Investigation, Forensic Investigation, Methods from Experts, Confession of a Serial Killer, The Untold Story of Dennis Rader, the BTK Killer, The Mind of a Murderer, The Forensic Science of CSI, Inside the Minds of Serial Killers, and The Forensic Psychology of Criminal Minds. Now, she presents workshops to law enforcement, psychologists, coroners, and attorneys on cognitive distortion and observational intelligence, and has consulted for several television series, including The Alienist, CSI and Bones. She also writes a regular blog for Psychology Today and has appeared in numerous crime documentaries for the ID Network. Wow, amazing backgrounds. You're welcome, Mark. Welcome, Katherine. Great to have you.
Good.
Thanks, Todd.
My goodness, haunted crime scenes. Now, this is something a lot of people don't, when we're out there investigating, we're doing these different locations and so forth, you don't really think of crime scenes. You don't think of the past. You don't think of what had happened. And you definitely don't think about working one of those scenes. You investigate, you go out with some equipment, you capture some evidence, things of that nature. But the crime scenes themselves, we're going to get into that in detail. But first of all, we have got to know how you two got together. I mean, 2 different backgrounds, yet similar. How did Mark and Katherine get together here?
Well, Katherine,
tell her, or you want to tell him?
Well, I don't know. I can start, and you can jump in and correct me when I make a mistake. But Katherine was working on her book Ghost, and she was going all over the country. And she had heard about Gettysburg, I guess, and decided that she was going to stop in and got in touch with me. And so I became a character in her book, Ghost. And it's really an excellent book. If you get a chance to please buy it and read it, because it does kind of detail a lot of these the ghostly phenomenon, and also the ghostly phenomena of all the different tours and the excitement about ghosts in little towns and big towns. At any rate, she contacted me, and we ended up I ended up interviewing her, or she ended up interviewing me, and we ended up spending a couple days just going around the battlefield. We got some eventually, because she was interested in ghost hunting as well. We did some paranormal investigations out on the battlefild. We got some EVP together out at the triangular field, and that kind of kicked off a friendship that has endured. When was that, Catherine? When was Ghost? That's about 15 years.
It was late 1990s, so we've been around for 20 years.
My goodness.
Wow, that's right. That's right. So, we've been buddies and we've done numerous investigations together. She's done a number on her own. But we just had a lot of fun doing it. It's a kind of a good relationship, because we're both writers. We both enjoy writing, and Catherine's got a great sense of humor. If you get to know her, she's a lot of fun, and it's just a fun relationship. Did I miss anything, Catherine?
It's Mark is a character in Ghost, primarily because we started out in it was like a ghost hunters conference weekend, but then we kept coming back together to do experiments and whatnot in the ghost house and out on the battlefield, just on our own. And I think the relationship really progressed through mutual respect, because he knows that I tend to be more of a skeptic, and I know that he wants to be careful in his work and have integrity in his work, which I can't say is true of all ghost hunters I've met. And so we've continued to work together, and then co-wrote these two books as well.
And you're right. You are absolutely correct. I mean, there's a time and a place when it comes to seriousness in paranormal research, and you two definitely have that chemistry. Because there are a lot of researchers coming into the field, especially, and some veterans that have kind of gone lax. They're not doing the legwork they used to. They don't understand how much goes into this anymore. They've kind of become too dependent on equipment during these investigations. Now, you two have investigated some amazing places together. We're going to get to those in detail, of course, coming up. But with that being said, there's so much to paranormal research, and not necessarily, not just the investigative part, but the psychological part, Catherine. And that is where I'm very interested. I know the audience is as well. How does your work as a forensic psychologist play in the paranormal? How does that combine? How do you use that with your investigations?
Well, there's sort of two approaches. One would be understanding how complex just the act of observation and listening is, because we bring a lot to it. We have biases. We frame it according to, often seeing what we want to see. And so I teach a lot about what I call mental mapping, to show that cognitive distortions are, first of all, human, and second, are very specific to what people are hoping to see or experience. And so that's one of the things. And the other thing would be behavioral analysis, because I've worked with some of the FBI profilers, and I also do consulting on death investigations. And so that would be kind of the other angle from which I approach it.
Okay, so the forensic side, the client process, let's get into that for a second, because let's start an investigation. That's normally where they start. You have an incident. You have someone calling you or contacting you regarding some type of haunting, something of that nature, and you're their last resort. You have people out there in this world, Catherine, Mark, let's face it, some of them are looking for some free Friday night entertainment. Others, let's say lightly, they're off their meds. How do you determine which is a serious case and which is one that you would just completely disregard? Mark, go ahead.
Well, you have to meet the people first. And I know that there's been a couple cases where we have had people call our office, and there's just something that you can tell. The story keeps changing. More weird things happen every day or two, and you say to yourself, now, is this really somebody who needs help, or is it just attention getting? And so that you have to be careful with. And a lot of times we'll go out and do the investigation anyway. And really, it's people jump to the conclusion too often when they say it's a demon. It's a demon in my house, and you got to come and cleanse it. And first of all, it's not what we do. So we'll go out and investigate. One place we did. Catherine and I. Catherine wasn't there, but another investigator, Patty Wilson, and I were out, and we actually found a place in the house. In the bedroom of the young girl who was really the subject of this. It was intense, some of the highest EMF readings I've ever found in a house. And I said, I think this is the problem. Is that whatever's around this room, electronically, you have a problem here, and it may be affecting her. She's an adolescent, and it could be the problem. That being said, of course, he said, okay, I'm going to change her room right now. So they changed her room and moved her somewhere else. Hadn't heard back from them. But the other interesting thing is one of the things we did find there was a concentration of electromagnetic energy right in front of the fireplace, which moved as we were detecting it and then vanished. In other words, when I went back to it, it wasn't there. So that that may have been definitely a paranormal event or phenomena. And so that's the way we looked at that first one. That's the one I'm thinking about right now. Now, Catherine may have a couple things to add to that because she would get more into the psychology of the individuals. Go ahead, Catherine.
Well, I actually like people off their meds because I like characters. I find them interesting. The people who test my patients are the ones who claim that a paranormal explanation is the only explanation for blah, blah, blah. And that stops them from actually doing any kind of investigation. It's the same mistake police officers do when they do what we call threshold diagnosis. I know what's going on here. I've seen this before. And that shuts down all other possibilities right away. It's usually an error. It can end up in a really bad miscarriage of justice. And I think in the paranormal world, the same thing can happen. People see what they want to see. They don't check their biases. They don't do careful thinking. And they're the ones who probably test my patients a lot more than someone off their meds.
And that makes sense. That makes sense. I mean, you can have, a lot of these investigations can be dangerous as well. I mean, you do have some people that are off their medication or literally they haven't received any help whatsoever, Catherine. And the psychology aspect behind this is, are they some kind of is there schizophrenia involved? Are they hallucinating? Are they seeing these kinds of ghosts or demons? Do you find that a lot out there in the field?
I don't think I find it a lot, but I think the people who are talking about demons are more people who are looking for an explanation of that nature. It's not so much people who are schizophrenic, because if they're that floridly psychotic, they're not generally out in the field doing something. So I think the ones that I've seen who talk about demon possession and whatnot really, might come from a very heavily religious background. And so this is the explanation that makes sense to them. And it's not necessarily the only explanation there is. I should mention that even though I'm in the field of psychology, my PhD is actually in philosophy, and I taught logic for 15 years at Rutgers University. So I definitely can think my way through things that people tell me, and I can see fallacies in their thought processes. So I don't usually encounter, to answer your question, I don't encounter psychotic people, but I certainly encounter people who don't think very well.
Okay. No, and that's important out there because there are so many, and it's one of those fields where we all have to pick and choose. We all have to take what we hear with a grain of salt and try and act upon it. And there's some dangerous situations out there, but mostly it's pretty harmless. And like you said, there's not going to be a bunch of crazy people out there that are going to be calling for a research team to come in and investigate either. You're correct.
Well, for example, if you want to just talk about, one instance of logic, a person who went on, had a website and talked about the fact that he would always put dirty dishes out in his kitchen, and he'd come back and find them all stacked and put away, not cleaned up, but put away. And he couldn't figure out how this was happening, and so he went on talking about that he had this haunted house. And I thought, set up a camera. How hard is that? Why? How do you not even think that that's all you have to do is set up a camera before you leave the room? And so that, to me, that is just so silly to go about making conclusions that this is a haunted house when you've never even done any kind of testing that's so clearly and easily right there in front of you.
And again, I jump back to common sense. This is something that seems to be lacking in the field today. We become so dependent on this equipment, everything else. We seem to forget the common things, notepad, note-taking, things of that nature, things that are common sense. We seem to be forgetting. What do you guys think that perhaps the media or something else is involved in that? What would take away our common sense out there in the field? I mean, you guys have been out there for years, and you've seen it back in the day. You've seen it today. You've seen the change. A lot of us have seen the change. What do you think has been causing this lack of common sense, Mark?
Well, I think that the first thing the investigators on TV anymore do is they jump to the conclusion. I've heard the word demon on TV more times in the last couple of years than I think I've heard in the last 20, as the explanation for whatever the strange behavior, the strange things that are going on in these towns or these buildings. That's the explanation for it. And it's when people by the hundreds of thousands or even maybe millions see that on TV, it may be their first exposure to this type of thing, and they're like, "Oh my goodness, my keys disappeared. There's got to be a demon in my house." You know what I mean? And when it could be anything. Because ghosts can also do that. They like to have fun and move your keys or your. Well, I guess car keys don't count because everybody loses their keys.
Right.
But they like to move things and be playful. But it's not always a demon. But when you hear it on TV, that's a conclusion you jump to. And you can, if you look at a history of some of the programs that have been on, you can see very easily some of the earlier programs. They go in with all their equipment to a person's house that thought they were having some problems, and they'd run into the same thing I did. Well, there's a lot, high EMF here, or there's absolutely nothing, and so it could be her imagination or whatever, and so they would debunk everything. Mm-hmm. But I don't think people tune back in to watch somebody debunk something week after week. So I think they caught on to that the second or third season and realized we got to start finding some stuff. So, but then it really escalated after that, and not everything is a demon. When you're talking about strange things that happen in your house, it could be a mouse, or it could be a poltergeist, or it could be a spirit, but not necessarily a demon.
Again, common sense. And we're going to get We're going to get Catherine's take on that here when we come back. You guys stay tuned. More Haunted Voices Radio coming up here in just a few minutes. Join us, letstalkradio.net. Log into the chat room through Facebook, Twitter as a guest. More coming up. Stay tuned.
For station identification. It's the little cinder block building on the north side of town with the towel behind it. WGOG DB Clearwater. Let's talk. Shopping, dining, beautiful lakes and rivers, and a monster? Welcome to Braxton County, West Virginia. Centrally located, Braxton County, West Virginia is the ideal place to visit. Natural beauty and recreation abound with 2 beautiful lakes for easy kayaking and canoeing, and many hiking trails. Did we mention the Flatwoods Monster? That's right. Visit Braxton County, West Virginia's Flatwoods Monster Museum and not only learn about the Flatwoods Monster, but walk in the same footsteps as the people who witnessed it. Nearly all of our attractions can be found within a few miles of Interstate 79. Visit us online at braxtonwv.org. That's braxtonwv.org. Braxton County, West Virginia. Center yourself here. Terry Lovelace is a 64-year-old retired lawyer and former assistant attorney general. The earliest alien experience Terry can recall was when he was 8 years old. Incident at Devil's Den. In May of 1963, he saw a UFO and described it as a perfect silver disc. 3 years later, on a clear night, he saw a second flying disc outside his second-story bedroom window. Incident at Devil's Den. In 1975, while serving as a medic in the Air Force, he witnessed yet another UFO hovering 50 feet over an ICBM missile silo. Incident at Devil's Den. 2 years later, while he and a friend were camped in an isolated state park known as Devil's Den, Terry had a life-changing fourth encounter. Not only did Terry and a friend witness an estimated 5-story high UFO, but this fourth encounter would be an epic, life-altering event. Incident at Devil's Den by Terry Lovelace. Digital download or paperback now available on Amazon. In 2012, Keith Linder, after successfully obtaining a management position at a prestige healthcare company, decides the time is right for him and his girlfriend to move in together. That's putting things lightly. Weird things begin to happen within days of moving into the modern suburban home. The horrors they witnessed and desperately tried to fight off would end up putting them at the odds with members of the paranormal community and themselves. This gripping story, told from the house occupant's point of view, not only lists tales, but also includes pictures, video reenactments, commentary, and audio of the events being reported. Author Keith Linder does not ask you to believe him. He only asks you to listen. The Bothell Hell House by Keith Linder, now available on Amazon. The book, The Bothell Hell House. The author, Keith Linder. Order yours today on Amazon. Let's Talk Radio would like to remind you that if at first you don't succeed,
I got it.
Don't try skydiving. WGOG DB Clearwater. Let's talk.
Twenty-three minutes past the hour. Haunted Voices Radio Live. letstalkradio.net. Log into the chat room. Those of you just joining us, you missed the first part of the show. Don't worry, we've got you covered. About 30 minutes after the live broadcast, we will get the archive up to you, and you'll be able to listen to that. Subscribe for free over there on iTunes, Google Play Music, iHeartRadio. Just search Haunted Voices Radio or Let's Talk Radio, either one of those. And you'll be able to download the latest episode. Catch up on all the episodes over there. A lot of great programming over there at letstalkradio.net. Be sure and check that out. And, of course, we have a 2-hour special with none other than Mark Nesbitt, Dr. Katherine Ramsland. Both of them joining us for a 2-hour special. We're talking about haunted crime scenes, and we're getting to that. But first, we've got to get into the investigation itself. A lot of you folks listening are just new to the field, and we want to get you on the right path. A lot of you veteran researchers, hey, we all need a refresher course. Here it is. You cannot get it from 2 better people in this field. Now, before the break, we were talking about some common sense and what may have knocked it out of a few people out there in the investigation field. And we were going to get Catherine's comments on that before we switch gears here a little bit. Catherine, did you want to add anything to perhaps why the common sense has fallen from a lot of the top researchers out there? What's going on out there?
Well, I've definitely noticed in the past few years that, and this is just culture-wide, not necessarily about ghost hunters, but people have tended to think that, to become more attuned to emotionality, such that if I feel it, it's true, and that tends to dominate over good thinking processes. I've certainly seen that because they'd rather attune to how they feel than try to think well, and thinking well is a discipline. It's not easy to do. And so it's much easier and much faster just to feel it. And so they've come to see their emotions as being the source of all truth. I think you can see that culture-wide. And so I think it really has kind of infected people who are trying to do things like ghost hunting, because they then don't want to listen to why something isn't working out right. And we had this experience last year. We had a couple of haunted crime scene weekends. So we worked on the same case both weekends, but the differences between the people who worked on these with us, we actually saw this as like almost a Rorschach test, because their personalities were imprinted on this, and people got very emotionally wrapped up in their own ideas about what they thought had happened. And if we talk to them about, well, here's evidence against that, this is factual stuff that doesn't work with your notions, they threw out the facts in order to have their emotional resonance speak the truth to them. And I've seen that a lot. And I think that really does infect the ghost hunting culture.
That's interesting. You throw out the facts and let your emotion play the part. I mean, I'm as sensitive as a brick, so for me that wouldn't work out very well. But throwing your emotion in there, you have a lot of these cases that I'm sure a lot of, you both have been involved in. You have a lot of these cases that do have a lot of emotional involvement, attachment. You've got a lot of your intuitives out there that are empaths and so forth. So do you feel that that's stronger? Should we use more emotion, less facts? Do you think that would help us, or do you think that would?
No, I think that's the problem.
That's definitely the problem. People letting their emotions get in the way. I mean, that's something I just want to clarify. So,
and there's a difference between being psychically sensitive and being emotional. You know what I mean? In other words, someone can walk into a room, and we've done this before, and I just say, okay, where do you want to go and investigate them? It's a big room. It's a large area. Where do you want to? And I've seen, in fact, it was, I believe, a mother and a daughter, and they just looked at each other and they say, let's go over there. There was no emotion involved, but you know that there was a feeling that they had. And so they went over there, and that's where they started getting their results. So you can be psychically sensitive, without letting your emotions take over, because that is part of the analysis segment of the investigation. All investigations are basically split up into 4 basic segments: the detecting, recording, communicating, and analyzing. And the detecting part is, I think, where you want to use that sensitivity. and that's where the empath will come in and say, I feel like we should be over in that area, or I feel that there's a person here who's had some problems, or that type of emotion. But in terms of, you don't want that emotion type thing to end up in the analysis part. And I think that's what Catherine's talking about.
Yeah, when it does, there's resistance to hearing the facts, because if the facts interfere with that, all the emotional braiding and what feels right to me, they will completely discard the facts. This happens in juries, and this happens with police officers who've decided that their gut is telling them the truth and they don't want to hear anything else. So I think it's simply a human reaction, but I've seen more of it in the past few years, I think, than I've seen before.
And that makes complete sense, because a lot of that you can become very biased in an investigation, not necessarily, just a paranormal investigation, but like you said, juries, you have crimes as well. You have law enforcement that come up to a scene and an individual is raped. Perhaps your emotions get involved and it clouds the scene. It clouds either scene, the investigation as well. You may be investigating something way back in the past where there was a horrific murder, a guy killed his entire family or what have you. And your emotions can get involved with that. And like you said, Mark, you have your psychics out there, your empaths. They don't necessarily go with their gut. They go with a different, it's almost a different way they tune in. I don't know how they tune in. I honestly, I don't know. I don't want to know how they tune in, because I don't want to go in that area. But that is a different kind of thinking. And going with your gut or letting your emotion, it just puts a huge black cloud over everything, and you disregard the facts, which if you don't have those, you really don't have any evidence, right?
Correct. Yes, that's and that's like I said. Now I've seen mediums or psychics or whatever, literally start crying, but it's almost as if it's because they're watching the scene unfold before them, and it's not, they're still observers. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? They're not involved emotionally, because they're just kind of like watching, when you cry over a movie, or get, interested in a movie, you have to be careful at the end when you're doing your final analysis that doesn't cloud your thinking.
Yeah, and thought definitely needs to be added out there. I mean, it's become so, I can't find the words for it, but the field itself has become tainted, I guess poisoned, by an overabundance of equipment use, lack of common sense, and people putting their emotions before the actual research itself. And do you guys think, Catherine, we'll start with you. I mean, back in the day, all of this evidence that came about, paranormal research has been around for just centuries here. I mean, it's always been in the back of people's minds, but it used to be taboo. Do you feel that today, with that kind of attention, let's say, media on the light side, I know they've raised some awareness, but do you feel that kind of media involvement, that kind of has made it less taboo to discuss? Do you feel more people are coming forward than what they used to?
Well, I think that goes, across the board with pretty much everything, including, deviant things. You can find buddies who think and feel the same way as you in ways you never could before. So social media certainly has made people feel more confident. But on the other hand, early on, 20 years ago when we were doing this, we were satisfied to be able to document things that happened. We didn't necessarily have answers. We couldn't necessarily, pinpoint what this meant, but it was something that happened. We were happy with that. But I think the social media and the conversations that happen on this has put a lot of pressure on to have answers, to have, we need to know what this means. We need to know how this proves this and that, in a way we didn't feel 20 years ago when we were first doing this. So I think that pressure And also all the TV shows, because they also weren't on 20 years ago, all the TV shows where, they're finding this and that. And we know a lot of that's fake. I know a lot of it's fake. I don't know about you guys. But I know. And so because that's out there, and there's a lot of audiences who accept it as real, they want to have that stuff happen for them too. And they want to have it happen every time. And they want to have clarity on exactly what it is. And if they don't, they'll put the clarity on it by their own interpretations. For example, we had a thing out in Gettysburg once, and people heard what they said was a ghost train, and they knew it was a ghost train because it was in the wrong direction for where the train tracks were. And two different groups heard it, so they knew that it actually had happened and it was a ghost train, and they were all so very excited that they had a ghost train. And nobody actually went over to investigate. And when I did, it turned out to be a jackhammer crew at night.
Wow.
So do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
People want things to be the way they want them, and they're all excited about their explanations. And I don't think it used to be quite the pressure to have these phenomena as there is now, because you see other people getting them.
That makes sense. What do you think, Mark? What's your opinion on all this?
Well, Gettysburg is kind of like a microcosm of a lot of the things that you see. And in the old days, before any of the ghost phenomena happened, I mean, they're people will go out and take a picture and go home with a picture of Big Round Top or the Battle of the Field of Pickett's Charge or whatever, and that was what made them happy. Now they come and they want to get a picture of a ghost, and it almost any time you can go out there and get, especially with digital cameras anymore, get pictures of the orbs and things like that. Now, I'm not saying all orbs are dust. We've seen some orbs do some strange things. Catherine and I have, and so that's not dust. But I'd say 90 to 95% of them are. And once they do that, they're happy. Once they get the picture of the orb, they're happy. They can go home and show their friends. And they don't realize it's so much deeper than that. It's so much deeper than that. It's learning the stories of these people and the soldiers who fought and died there, and knowing, going out to a site on a battlefield, standing there and say, I know who shot and was killed here. And then attempting to maybe communicate with them or ask them if you can take their picture or something like that. And in terms of the crime scenes, it's similar to that. We had a crime scene near where Catherine lives. I'm not sure if I can mention it or not, the site, but I'm not sure if this would have happened unless we'd have been there, but I actually went into the room where the guy was killed or died, and got EVP there. And to me, that's pretty important. That tells me that I'm in the right spot, for getting that type of thing. And so it wasn't just like a sensational thing that, okay, I got my scalp, so now I can leave. That just made me more and more interested in that particular case. And we wrote about it in Haunted Crime Scenes, and it was just really remarkable, at least in terms of the way I look at doing these investigations. So I'm not sure what everybody else wants to get out of them, but I know what I like to get out of them, and that's that affirmation, I guess, of something I'm researching and something I'm working on.
And that's what I love about having you two on, is getting into the depth of this, not just the paranormal investigation standpoint, but the forensic standpoint as well, the haunted crime scenes. These are things people really do not think about. You see on television, you have the psychic pulls up in an old Lincoln Continental or something and steps out, and all of a sudden she sees exactly what happened down to the time. So this is the stereotype that people have of haunted crime scenes, you think of psychic, missing person, finding this, but you really don't put the two together on how important it is to collect your evidence on both sides. And we're going to get into this in depth, but first, you guys have a couple books out there. I want to get these out there. Now, you have 2 haunted crime scene books. Tell us about them, Catherine.
The first one is called Blood and Ghosts, Paranormal Forensics Investigators, and that was the one Mark and I thought, we looked at the parallels between how paranormalist investigators work and other investigators, and thought this would be a really great team for expanding stuff for both teams, so you can bring the best of both worlds into it. And so we outlined how you would do that kind of investigation with the complementarity in Blood and Ghosts, with some of the haunted crime scenes were there as well. And once we had a chapter in haunted crime scenes, we thought, why don't we do a whole book just about all the different crime scenes that have some kind of paranormal story attached to it? So that's what we did for that.
And that's what we're going to get into as well. We're going to get into some of these cases in detail, second hour. Of course, a lot of that stuff can't be revealed, folks. I just understand that. But Mark, did you want anything to add? Did you want to add anything about the books? Get it out there. What do you think of them?
Well, that one, I have to give credit to Catherine, because that was her idea because she realized that there was a parallel between the techniques that CSIs use, the crime scene investigators, and the parallels with ghost hunters, what paranormal investigators use. In other words, not necessarily the equipment, but certainly the technique and the disciplines that the crime scene investigators use can be transferred over to what paranormal investigators do. So, and her thought was, what happens when the CSIs run out of details of the crime? Can you call in PFIs, paranormal forensic investigators, to tap into the other side and gain something that you can continue the investigation with? And we bounced this off Greg McCrary, who was a former FBI profiler. Mm-hmm. And I asked him flat out, I said, Greg, would you take something that was given to you by a PFI and run with it to help advance the investigation? He said, absolutely. We'll do anything to keep an investigation going. One more lead. It's just one more lead. So that kind of gave us both, I think, a little bit of incentive to keep going on these things. And as Catherine said, the second book is more of the crime scenes around the country. And actually, we had a couple international crime scenes as well.
And that's the meat of it, is the law enforcement teams, judges especially, all of these different people accepting that part of the investigation and letting good, quality trained paranormal researchers, investigators, forensics out there, paranormal forensic investigators, let them do their job, do their thing, whatever it takes to catch a killer, catch this, find a missing person. You would think that whatever it took would be accepted. And back in the day, it wasn't. It was frowned upon. It was laughed at. Pseudoscience.
It's still kind of not. It's definitely not admissible.
Sure.
Mainly because of the Salem witch trials. That's how far back we go with this.
Wow.
But a lot of times, investigators, police will take this advice and use it, and you don't really have to reveal, hey, it was my gut that told me to go off in this direction, where actually it had been a remote viewer, who may have told that person to go in that direction. So it's still not admissible.
Right.
But it certainly is helpful.
Right.
Well, there was a case in 2002 in which a ghost was admitted into court in Canada. So I just want to put that out there.
Yeah.
So a ghost was now there's also some states out there that it's a law that if a house is haunted that you have to say that to the realtor or to the agency or something. So they do mix it in just a tad, But as
Yes.
far as
Well, that's, and California and New York have laws about that. And some states have laws where you have to reveal it only if the buyer asks.
okay.
But that's not the same as getting into the courtroom.
No, it's not. It's not near the same. And that's the thing, is with all of this equipment, with all of this education out there, you would think that these things would start to be admissible in a court of law, because they're revealing names using electronic voice phenomenon. You have photography, you have photographic evidence, or do you? That's the thing, and that's what I want to get into with these crime scenes. All of this is coming up, folks. Join us in chat, letstalkradio.net. We want your opinion. If you were a judge, would you allow it in the courtroom? You be the judge on this. It's important. Log in through Facebook, Twitter as a guest. More Haunted Voices Radio. Mark Nesbitt, Dr. Katherine Ramsland. All of that coming up in just a few minutes. Stay tuned.
In a world of many voices, there's just one that needs to be heard. Yours. Join the conversation at letstalkradio.net.
Your Monday nights just got better. Tune in to paratalkradio.com. We are your paranormal talk. On the air, on the web, and in the field. We have guests from all over the paranormal world. We discuss ghosts, hauntings, Bigfoot, UFOs, and more. Check us out on Facebook Live on Monday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern at facebook.com/paratalkradio. Remember, wherever there is darkness, there is always delight. paratalkradio.com.
If you've ever wondered what your dog, cat, bird, or any other animal is thinking or trying to tell you, now's the time to crack their code. Make this year the year you learn telepathic animal communication and begin using the intuitive and psychic abilities we all have to connect with other species. The free website Speak Good Human is the perfect place to start. Speak Good Human is the internet's largest free animal communication practice site. It features tips, advice, how-tos, and more than 100 animals ready to help you practice and build your skills through telepathic conversation. And each February and August, you can join the thousands of other learners worldwide for the Animal Communication Practice Challenge, when you'll get daily encouragement, inspiration, and camaraderie as you pursue your dream of talking with animals. Get in on the conversation at www.talktoanimals.weebly.com. That's talktoanimals.weebly.com. Or Google Speak Good Human. Not only will your companion animals thank you, but you'll finally be able to hear it.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has delivered a one-of-a-kind reading experience, covering everything from psychics, UFOs, paranormal investigations, and more. To subscribe, visit fatemag.com or call 828-702-3032. That's 828-702-3032. Subscribe and find your true reports of the strange and unknown at fatemag.com.
Of course, we didn't invent great sound. We perfected it. WGOG Digital Broadcasting. Let's talk.
47 minutes past the hour. My goodness, time is flying by. Haunted Voices Radio. Those of you just joining us, welcome to the live broadcast. And if you missed the first part, don't worry, we have you covered. Everything's being archived. You can listen to the past program right there at letstalkradio.net. About 30 minutes after this live broadcast, we'll have it up there. Also syndicated to iTunes, Google Play Music, and of course iHeartRadio. You can listen on all those outlets. Just search Haunted Voices Radio. It's that simple. But of course, we want you to come to letstalkradio.net. We make it real easy for you. You just go there on your mobile device, tablet, on your computer, and just click play. Search Haunted Voices Radio. Just find it right there on the main page. And it's that simple. Join us in chat as well. Those of you just trickling in here from your evening or just putting the kids down for the night, log into chat right there at letstalkradio.net, Facebook, Twitter. Real easy to get in there. A lot of great questions, a lot of great comments coming in the chat room. because before the break we were talking about putting you in the judge's seat. Would you allow this paranormal evidence to be admitted into a court of law to sway a case? These are important things. We're talking with Mark Nesbitt, of course, Dr. Katherine Ramsland, 2-hour special on haunted crime scenes. And we do have a question here. This is a great question that came in from Brenda out of chat, guys. And she's asking, could spirits of crime victims be responsible for those gut instincts that some detectives claim to have about a crime scene? What do you think, Katherine?
Well, I guess I'd have to know more about the detective. If he or she thought this was really unusual, they wouldn't ordinarily have feelings like this. They don't know where it came from. I think that's more likely to be something possibly from outside them. But if they tend to operate on their gut, I'm not sure that I would accept that unless they also had other things like having dreams, having a sense they have to keep going back or keep looking at something. So for me, it comes down to the personality of the detective.
Okay. And Mark, do you agree with that? Anything you want to add?
Well, yeah, I think you can go into that's where your equipment, at least basic equipment, would come in and help. Because as I was mentioning over the break, one of the places that Katherine and I talked about it earlier, I guess I can talk about it, tell you where it was, is Hotel Bethlehem. Mm-hmm. And the murder took place in the bathroom of this one area, and we were actually there. We went in. The death incident. The death incident. We can't jump to any conclusions here, right? Exactly. And I do that all the time, and I'm always being reminded by Katherine. But the death incident occurred in a bathroom, and it's not a copy room. So I went in there, and it was kind of strange because the fellow was found, the victim was found leaning up against the door with 2 gunshots. And yet it was because he was leaned up against the door and had to push the door open, they classified it as a suicide. And Katherine told me that, it's really not unusual for a suicide to, not kill themselves the first time they shot themselves and then shoot themselves again. But I went in to the room and I pulled out my trusty recorder and I asked a couple questions. And one of the questions I asked of the gentleman was, "How did you die?" And when I played it back, it was kind of rough and it was not class A by any means. Okay. I got a 2-syllable word. Both syllables ended with "er." In other words, murder. It sure wasn't suicide, what Daddy said, but it sounded like murder. So Katherine took this information to the local coroner, and what did he say, Katherine? The reason we were there is because of the ghost sightings. Okay. There were several ghost sightings on that floor by different people who did not know each other. So that gave credibility to maybe this guy wants somebody's attention. So the coroner then, because he knows me and he works with me and trusts me, decided to look into the records, and we found that the shots were to the stomach and leg, which is extremely unusual for a suicide. One shot could be an accident, but that's not usually where a suicide would shoot themselves. And then he found some other things he thought, which I really can't say, but he thought made the incident look more suspicious than it originally had to him.
Yeah, when you have a gut shot and a leg shot, unless you feel really guilty about yourself, that is not a way to go. That is slow and agonizing. Right. So and he was shot during the fireworks of one of our summer festivals. So to me, that suggests planning and a cover up. Yeah, you've got obvious bangs going on in the background. What better time to do that and to rule that out as a suicide? It does. It seems kind of weird. And to capture something like that, Mark, which I would agree. You and I are on the same page there with the two-syllable That's definitely murder, something to that extent. And they have a voice when they cross, when they pass on. A lot of researchers out there that are into electronic voice phenomenon, ITC, instrumental transcommunication, all these different techniques, they hear voices. Now, a lot of these may not be credible, okay? A lot of these may be the Class Cs or the whispers or even just blurbs of different syllables and things. But it's a voice nonetheless, and it's something that we have to pay attention to. And putting these facts that these two do out in the field using, common sense, folks, and putting these things together, that's how we make that step forward. I'm not saying, next year and the next decade that all of this is going to be admissible into court in the courtroom. They're not going to have, I call so-and-so to the stand. He has an analog recording of blah, blah, blah. I don't see them putting that in. I don't see society accepting that because it's not, what's the word I'm looking for? Tangible. It's not something they can hold. It's not something they can physically put in a jar. It's not something they can put red tape across that says evidence. Because it's not physical, right, guys? Do you think that's what it is, Mark, Catherine?
I don't see that because they do voice recordings of people talking all the time, and it's accepted as evidence. And I did mention this case where a woman was raped and murdered. They couldn't solve it, and the man who owned the janitorial company of the building where her body was found was cleaning a big desk one day, and it was like a black surface. He looked down and saw an image, and he looked up, and it was the image of the woman who had been murdered, and she kept pointing to the desk. And he thought of one of his employees who always wore a black shirt. So he went to the police and told them that they should investigate. They did. They found evidence against the guy. So he was arrested and went to trial. And the guy, the owner of the janitorial company, was allowed to say this was, in fact, how he came up with the notion that it was his employee. So that's not exactly getting a ghost into the courtroom, but they did allow that as part of his testimony.
Good. And that's exactly what I wanted to hear, is the voice. A voice is a voice. It could come from you and I, this recording, they could play it back and hear this. Or they could play this EVP that's a Class A crystal clear, and it's getting a message across after a question is asked. A voice is a voice, right? Would you agree, Mark?
Well, yeah, and I'm working on a book on EVP right now, and so I'm going over some of the EVP that I've gotten over the last 15 years or so. And the more I go over it, the more I'm listening more closely, and there's a lot more EVP than is obvious when you start to listen to it very closely. There are audio specialists now that you see out there who are starting to pick up on even the most minute, the quietest of video, of audio evidence. For example, the shots that were heard at the Kennedy assassination, the orders that some people heard were given at the Kent State massacre, and so as things you get an audio man in there, and you might be able to pick up something, play it for a jury, if it's amplified. Play it for a jury, and all of a sudden it's just like somebody talking and saying, yes, I was killed by such and such. Now, that would be groundbreaking, I think.
And the other thing would be, we do have digital voice analysis where we would perhaps have a phone call from a suspect that's been recorded, and then we can compare that to his actual voice and get a fairly close match that is considered evidence. So I think that if you had a recording of somebody post-mortem and it's clear enough to be able to link it to that person's voice when they were alive, that would certainly be something that could be brought in as evidence, because ultimately the jury decides whether they're going to accept it. Mm-hmm. I mean, the judge is supposed to decide what's admissible and what's been scientifically gained, but they've already admitted voice analysis as a viable tool. if you were able to show post-mortem voice matches pre-mortem voice or pre-death voice or living voice, I think it would be difficult to not allow that.
I agree. And their equipment as well. I mean, let's face it. They have a lot of equipment out there that they use for voice recognition, or the kinds that they zoom in from miles away and can hear a conversation. Who's to say that conversation's not distorted by something in between those two spaces? There's all kinds of things that a jury or a judge or an attorney can throw in to throw the case off the loop, but a voice is a voice, conversation's conversation, and who's to say that what you put into the courtroom on that recording, if it's crystal clear, who's to say? They can't tell the difference. They can't tell if that person was deceased or disembodied if you didn't tell them. These are things that I definitely want to think about, because I would like to see it. More of these in these haunted crime scenes, which is exactly what we're going to be discussing second hour. So you guys stay tuned. We're going to, of course, run some news here for you. You're going to have some news. That's the way it goes. But after that, we're going to get into the haunted crime scenes, some cases, how the investigation techniques work. Are they the same? Do they differ? More with Mark and Catherine when we come back. Stay tuned. Haunted Voices Radio Live. Let'sTalkRadio.net. We'll be right back. Here's your latest news.
While the other stations are run from high-rises in the city, we're programmed from a little bungalow on Windtree Drive.
A lawsuit in the works. I'm Lisa Lacera, Fox News. New York, California, and several other states signing on to a lawsuit against the Trump administration over the plan to add a question about citizenship to the next U.S. Census.
Given the way that this administration has attacked immigrants, you can understand why immigrant families would be afraid to fill out the census questionnaire.
California Attorney General Javier Becerra, White House spokeswoman Sarah Sanders defends the move.
We've contained this question that's provided data that's necessary for the Department of Justice to protect voters, and specifically to help us better comply with the Voting Rights Act.
Sanders says she's not aware of any specific outreach efforts being planned to encourage immigrants to respond to the survey. An Arizona mother facing charges after authorities say she killed her young children. Fox's Steve Rappaport has more live.
Lisa, police arrested Brittany Velasquez after her 2-year-old son and 10-month-old daughter were found dead in their car seats in a vehicle outside the family's home last night.
CPR efforts were performed. They were not successful.
Superior Arizona Police Chief Christian Ensley.
It was reported by a relative that she would often leave her kids at the home and expect someone else to take care of them.
Relatives say Velasquez is mentally unstable and called Child Protective Services several times to report the children were in danger. Officials say investigators discovered evidence of foul play but would not elaborate. Lisa?
Steve, also in Arizona, police in the suburban town of Buckeye outside Phoenix say their positively identified remains recovered in a farm field as those of 10-year-old Jesse Wilson, who went missing nearly 2 years ago.
While that is not the outcome of which we hoped, we want to stress that this is not the end of this investigation.
Buckeye Police Detective Tamala Skaggs, Fox News, fair and balanced. A German automaker facing a lawsuit in the U.S.
The lawsuit filed on behalf of U.S. BMW drivers alleges that BMW cheated on emissions on diesel vehicles, including its X5 models and 330D models, vehicles that promised power, fuel economy, and efficiency, but that, according to the suit, emitted levels of nitrogen oxide many times higher than their gasoline counterparts. BMW, in a statement, said it's reviewing the lawsuit and that as a matter of principle, BMWs are not manipulated and comply with all respective legal requirements. Jeff Manasso, Fox News.
The official report on what Prince had in his system the day he died is out.
Prince's level of fentanyl in his body at the time of his death was very high. The Midwest Medical Examiner's Office had ruled the musician's cause of death at his Paisley Park studios in April of 2016 fentanyl toxicity. The Confidential Toxicology reports that concentrations of fentanyl in Prince's blood was 67.8 micrograms per liter. Fatality fatalities have been documented in people with blood levels ranging from 3 to 58 micrograms per liter. The 57-year-old had similar amounts of the opioid in his liver and stomach, where it hadn't even been absorbed into his system. Michelle Polino, Fox News.
A federal appeals court overturning a decision in a long-running legal battle over whether Google infringed on programming language owned by rival tech company Oracle to build its Android operating system. The court ruling Google's use of Java was not fair and sent the case back to trial to determine damages. And Apple looking to grab more of the education market, rolling out a new iPad and classroom software. The new iPad has a more powerful chip and new free software for teachers, but the starting price could be a turnoff. It starts at $299 for students, compared with less than $200 for some Windows-based laptops. Lisa Lacera, Fox News Radio.
Terry Lovelace is a 64-year-old retired lawyer and former assistant attorney general. The earliest alien experience Terry can recall was when he was 8 years old. Incident at Devil's Den. In May of 1963, he saw a UFO and described it as a perfect silver disc. 3 years later, on a clear night, he saw a second flying disc outside his second-story bedroom window. Incident at Devil's Den. In 1975, while serving as a medic in the Air Force, he witnessed yet another UFO hovering 50 feet over an ICBM missile silo. Incident at Devil's Den. 2 years later, while he and a friend were camped in an isolated state park known as Devil's Den, Terry had a life-changing fourth encounter. Not only did Terry and a friend witness an estimated 5-story high UFO, but this fourth encounter would be an epic, life-altering event. Incident at Devil's Den by Terry Lovelace. Digital download or paperback now available on Amazon.
Top of the hour. Welcome back. Haunted Voices Radio Live. Let'sTalkRadio.net. Chat room is open. Right there. Log in through Twitter, Facebook as a guest. Get your derrieres in there because we have got an amazing second hour planned here for you. And if you missed the first hour, those of you just trickling in here, I see you. Don't worry. We've got you covered. And you'll be able to catch everything that our guest this evening, Mark Nesbitt, Dr. Katherine Ramsland, said right there, letstalkradio.net. In the archive section, just search Haunted Voices Radio. You'll find all the mediums there where you can also listen to the program and all the past shows right there at letstalkradio.net. Now, those of you in chat, and some of you are tired, I understand. Terry, her eyes are heavy, guys, but she says her ears are wide open. That is a good thing. That is exactly what we want. Because this hour we're going to be discussing haunted crime scenes. Okay, we're going to get into detail about the crime scenes. We're going to get into some of the differences and likenesses of investigating on a crime scene and compared to, paranormal research. All of these things we're going to get into. And welcome back to the second hour, Mark, Catherine. It's great to have you. Thanks for taking time out of your busy schedules to come on here and educate everyone this evening. It's definitely a treat for all of us. Now, what about some crime scenes here? Let's get into some likenesses, some differences here. Now, haunted crime scene, other than the obvious about it being haunted, how is this treated differently than, let's say, a home investigation or business investigation? How is it treated differently, Catherine?
Well, a regular investigation, they're looking for the physical evidence. They're looking for behavioral evidence, reconstructing what they believe occurred, collecting evidence and according to a specific protocol so that they have the correct chain of custody before it potentially gets into court. Everything is done by the book. And, maybe you'll get an answer at the end of that process. Maybe you won't. But with the haunted crime scene, the idea for paranormal investigations is that you now have an extra dimension. You have the potential help of an unquiet spirit, for example, somebody who is said to have committed suicide, but in fact was murdered and wants people to know, or a missing person who's not being found, who's been buried somewhere, and somehow they managed to make make some kind of impact on someone like a remote viewer. So the added dimension of the potential for help from the spirit of somebody means that you have yet one more piece of evidence you need to put into the game.
Okay. Mark, anything you want to add to that?
Well, every crime scene is a little bit different, and what we found is some paranormal investigative techniques will work and some won't. For example, remote viewing is one that hasn't been used a whole lot, and that certainly would fit in a lot of these crime scenes, because remote viewers, if, for example, there is a missing body.
Okay.
The remote viewer can often locate that, or at least give clues as to what they see around where the body is, so that might help investigators in the field find that particular body. It's been actually done before using remote viewers. Not many people know about it, but it was actually a government backed program called Project Stargate, and they used it for a lot of things during the Cold War. Not the least of which was trying to locate the Iranian hostages back at the end of the Carter presidency. But at any rate, that is one of the tools that you could use. The other one is if you're in the site where the event happened, you could try EVP, try and get more information that way. So it all sort of depends upon the crime itself. And I think the most remarkable thing is, of course, the fact that the spirit itself, whether it's that of the victim or a witness or maybe a relative of the victim who has passed on, it's actually that an individual that close trying to help you out with the investigation, and I think that's not only interesting but very important too.
Okay, and a lot of these haunted crime scenes that you two have worked on, been a part of, were they mostly cold cases, or was this anything recent?
Well, it's hard to really get involved in a recent case that hasn't been resolved, because detectives certainly don't want you to be doing that. I have some ins with some investigators, but they don't really want somebody kind of coming in unless they're really at their wits' end and they think maybe something you do could assist. But they typically wouldn't want you at the actual scene in case there's potential for, first of all, corrupting the scene, and second of all, the media getting wind of it and ridiculing the cops for doing that.
And that makes sense, again, with the whole pseudoscience being thrown in there and everything. But that is the beauty of this, is it does play a huge part in a haunted crime scene. Now, the methods that both of you use, they're tried and true. They've worked on both sides of the fence. Now, have any of these methods that you guys have used, any of these cases that you've investigated, these haunted cases, have they been reopened because of the evidence that you guys have gathered?
I can't speak to that.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess the hard part is dealing with open and sometimes even cold cases. The police will classify them as a cold case so that they can remain open. And as long as they're open, they can't give you any information on them, right. And so it could go on for 15 or 20 years.
And even if they use you, they can't say they are, and neither can you.
Yeah. It's like a gag order has been put out there, which makes complete sense. But it makes me feel better, and I know it makes the audience feel better, knowing that maybe some of these techniques were used, maybe a case was solved. So it's nice to have that kind of hope out there that they just didn't give up, throw it in the locker, and say, we'll let the next century deal with this. So it's nice that if they are, quote unquote, using this type of evidence out there to reopen some of these, it's nice to know. It's nice to know that they are looking at all angles before they just throw in the towel and give up. And, that being said, I mean, anything that you can share, are any of these stories, these cases that you believe could benefit from using the techniques you guys describe?
Well, one of the cases we have in the book has to do with the last victim of Ted Bundy, and the prosecutor of this case actually wrote about what happened, and he said he didn't care what anyone said. This is what happened. And so it was a 12-year-old girl who went missing. Her name was Kimberly Leach, and they believed she'd been abducted. They couldn't imagine where her body might be or where she was if she wasn't dead. And, time went by. They hadn't found her. They did consult some psychics who basically didn't help them at all. And then one woman drew a map, remotely viewed a map of the place she said the body would be found, but she placed it very far away from where the scene actually ended up. But nevertheless, what was very interesting is that they had physical evidence from the soil samples in a van that Bundy had stolen to identify a part of the area where they thought they had to look. And so they went out and they were standing next to a sinkhole. And one of them said, her map had a sinkhole and a canal that went to another sinkhole. And we're looking at that right now. And also on her map were picnic tables and horses and a train track and some bushes. And as they looked around, they realized, wow, you know what? There used to be horses up north of us. There's a train track south of us. There's a picnic area over there. And this looks like, and what they did not know as they were looking at that sinkhole is they were within 10 yards of the body.
Wow.
She had been very correct in what you saw. She just was incorrect in where she placed it. But because she had drawn the map and they recognized the features from the map, they came back and did a much more extensive search and were able to find her. And that was in the prosecutor's book. I thought that was pretty impressive.
Wow. That is amazing. Mark, do you have anything to add to that? I mean, my God.
Well, yeah. I think remote viewing is really underrated in terms of what a tool it could be, and it's not difficult. It can be people can be trained, it can be taught, but there are some people who are very, very good at it without even being trained. We had a paranormal weekend, a paranormal instructing weekend in Gettysburg, and we were going someplace, and as an experiment, I said, okay, just take out a piece of paper, everybody sit down. You don't know where we're going, as I haven't told you. It's not in the literature. I want you to draw. I want you to remote view and draw where you think, what it looks like, where we're going. And, we had maybe 8, 12 people, and some of the stuff was, normally in remote viewing, you'll get lines, or different. 2 sisters there drew a detailed drawing of the place where we were going, complete with from the view of the front porch, the house, the barn, and the pond that was out there, and the woods behind it. They put a door on the second floor of the barn, and they weren't sure why. But I told them, I said, well, that's the way that they unloaded the hay back in the old days, because the barn was original to the Civil War. One woman had little lines drawn towards the pond, and I had no idea because it wasn't stream fed. You couldn't see those. I asked the owner of the land. I said, what does that mean? She said, well, it's spring fed. In other words, she saw underground. all these springs leading to that pond.
Wow.
To fill it up. And so I think that, for example, if I were ever going to do, if Katherine ever came to me and said, we need a remote viewer for this crime scene, those sisters would be the first ones I'd call.
They'd be the first. And Katherine, just out of curiosity, we have a few minutes here before break, but from a psychological standpoint, from a mental standpoint, why do you feel that, people like those two sisters are able to see those kinds of things in their mind's eye, as they say? Do you think this is just something, maybe an untapped resource that all of us have, or is this really truly a gift from a mental standpoint? What do you think?
I actually don't know, and it's not really a psychological question. I don't know, and I actually don't like when psychics say we all have this ability, because they don't know either. They haven't tested every single person in the whole world to be able to make that statement. They're making an assumption about the way they think the human mind works, and that assumption is not necessarily grounded in anything but what they want to believe. So I personally don't have this sense that we all have this ability. But like Mark, I have been very impressed with remote viewing, and it could certainly be that we can tap into something if we concentrate on it enough. Some people are more talented at it than others, as that government program demonstrated. There were a few who were really the stars, and others were, had hits and misses, but more misses than hits. So what does that mean? It's not really a psychological thing. I think it's about attunement and focus and the ability to somehow catch whatever it is in the air around us that allows people to be able to see places where they aren't, presently at.
Very, very good answer. And thank you for sharing that. Very important. That is something that a lot of you take note of that. It's on the fence. It's still on the fence. This is something we can't etch in stone, folks. This is something that I know a lot of you want to believe that it's truly 100% accurate. It's not. You have to have that caution in the back of your mind no matter what you do. Paranormal research, haunted crime scenes, you have to have that percentage of skepticism. Don't be naive out there. Weigh both sides before you make your decision. That's what's important here. More Haunted Voices Radio coming up in just a few minutes. More with Dr. Katherine Ramsland and Mark Nesbitt. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
In a world of many voices, there's just one that needs to be heard. Yours. Join the conversation at letstalkradio.net. Terry Lovelace is a 64-year-old retired lawyer and former assistant attorney general. The earliest alien experience Terry can recall was when he was 8 years old. Incident at Devil's Den. In May of 1963, he saw a UFO and described it as a perfect silver disc. 3 years later, on a clear night, he saw a second flying disc outside his second-story bedroom window. Incident at Devil's Den. In 1975, while serving as a medic in the Air Force, he witnessed yet another UFO hovering 50 feet over an ICBM missile silo. Incident at Devil's Den. 2 years later, while he and a friend were camped in an isolated state park known as Devil's Den, Terry had a life-changing fourth encounter. Not only did Terry and a friend witness an estimated 5-story high UFO, but this fourth encounter would be an epic, life-altering event. Incident at Devil's Den by Terry Lovelace. Digital download or paperback now available on Amazon. In 2012, Keith Linder, after successfully obtaining a management position at a prestige healthcare company, decides the time is right for him and his girlfriend to move in together. That's putting things lightly. Weird things begin to happen within days of moving into the modern suburban home. The horrors they witnessed and desperately tried to fight off would end up putting them at the odds with members of the paranormal community and themselves. This gripping story told from the house occupant's point of view not only lists tales, but also includes pictures, video reenactments, commentary, and audio of the events being reported. Author Keith Linder does not ask you to believe him. He only asks you to listen. The Bothell Hell House by Keith Linder, now available on Amazon. The book, The Bothell Hell House. The author, Keith Linder. Order yours today on Amazon.
Shopping, dining, beautiful lakes and rivers, and a monster? Welcome to Braxton County, West Virginia. Centrally located, Braxton County, West Virginia is the ideal place to visit. Natural beauty and recreation abound with 2 beautiful lakes for easy kayaking and canoeing, and many hiking trails. Did we mention the Flatwoods Monster? That's right. Visit Braxton County, West Virginia's Flatwoods Monster Museum and not only learn about the Flatwoods Monster, but walk in the same footsteps as the people who witnessed it. Nearly all of our attractions can be found within a few miles of Interstate 79. Visit us online at braxtonwv.org. That's braxtonwv.org. Braxton County, West Virginia. Center yourself here.
LetsTalkRadio.net.
23 minutes past the hour. Welcome back. Haunted Voices Radio Live. Todd Bates here with you, and we have a 2-hour special with Dr. Katherine Ramsland and Mark Nesbitt. And a lot of you folks are just now tuning in. Not a problem at all. Welcome aboard. Join us in chat, letstalkradio.net. You can log in through Facebook, Twitter, as a guest if you like in there. Post your questions in all capital letters. A lot of chatters in there are they're standing on the fence here. They're trying to read in between the lines, and it's tough. We are talking about haunted crime scenes. We're talking about forensics. We're getting into some remote viewing. So if you missed any portion of this program, it's very important you download the archive, listen to that. Definitely learning a lot here from what's going on. And getting into some of the cases, we're talking about some of those, the differences, what you guys out there researching should use, shouldn't use, methods that are commonly used in paranormal investigations are not really commonly used in forensics or haunted cases. So many differences, yet so many similarities. It's very important that you guys listen to this program because we're learning a lot, and it's opening a lot of your minds out there, which is what we want, because this is an eye-opener. Some of these things are tangible, some aren't. And that's the beauty of this, is opening up your mind, yet keeping some of it closed and cautionary, because you don't want to be naive in this field. It's really tough. But that's what we're talking about with Katherine and Mark, and we've kind of got into the meat of the investigations. Things are true, yet they're not true. You can take some of this with a grain of salt, yet some you can just completely throw away. So there's really no absolutes, which is what makes this field so great, is because we really haven't reached any yet. It's one of those things that's a driving force that it's going to continue until the end of time, more than likely. It's tough. It's tough to let some of this into a courtroom. We've talked about that as well, those of you just joining us. So there's bits and pieces that you need to put together throughout this program before you make your own, base your foundation off of it. It's real important. Now, getting back into the crime scenes, guys, we were talking about that and the remote viewing before the break. Now, during the break, we were talking about a very interesting case that I'm not aware of, and I am just really, really interested in this. Now, Katherine, you were saying there's something about a book that a gentleman wrote regarding voices from the dead. And
yeah, when I first got involved in all this during the years when I met Mark, there were a few books floating around that were kind of the thing everyone was reading. Phone Calls from the Dead was one of them, and that was documentation of phone calls that people have received from someone who then it turned out had already died. So how did they possibly get these calls? And that guy, Scott Rogo, so he was a paranormal researcher, and he was an up-and-coming expert in the field, and he was murdered in his home. So he had a number of associates who were psychics and mediums, and they claimed that his ghost was coming to them and trying to help them solve this murder, because the police didn't have any leads at all. They couldn't make out who would want him dead, and they just really weren't clear. I mean, there was evidence in the house, but they couldn't link it to anyone. So these psychics said that, here's the ghost who was there, obviously, who can give us this valuable information through psychic means. So this is the perfect scenario. This is exactly what we're talking about being the thing that we would like to achieve and accomplish. And one of those psychics, I can't recall his name, but he touted himself as being quite the famous psychic, wrote a book about how he has solved this case. The police did, in fact, arrest somebody for it, believed that they had the right guy. It was the guy the psychic said, named. And so he went ahead and wrote in his book that he had solved this case with the help of the ghost of Scott Rogo, and turned out that wasn't the guy. So it is today an unsolved case. So much for the ghost of Scott Rogo being able to speak to his psychic and medium friends and solve this case. It didn't happen. And so what does that mean, for something like what we want to do, which is to put together a paranormal forensics investigative team? I mean, that is a sobering thing. That was the kind of thing I'm talking about with wishful thinking and bias and poor investigative abilities. Where somebody so much wants something to be the case that they use confirmation bias. That is, they develop their ideas, and then something happens that they say is evidence of their methods, and it turns out that those people were completely wrong. The person that they identified was not the guy.
That is a great example. That is a great example, because you have, I've heard it myself. I've heard researcher after researcher tell me, don't worry. Whenever I die, I'm going to come back and tell you exactly what it's like over there.
Right.
And I'm thinking, sure. Just like the billions of others that have before you. Okay. Go ahead, Mark.
Well, I think this points out one thing that we can say, and it's one of the concepts that Katherine and I had that is important, is that it's a team that we're talking about here. Paranormal forensic investigators, not just one psychic. Police have been using a psychic for years and years and years. That's just part of this team, the psychic. You need someone who's adept at EVP, remote viewers, maybe photographers, setting up cameras, special places to put the trail cams, the infrared motion sensing trail cams, or even we have one friend who actually will ask the ghost, may take your picture, and gets lots and lots of photographs of entities. And so the team, though, spreads it out a little bit. You know what I mean? It's not just one psychic's impression. It's a large amount of evidence that you get, that you can analyze then dispassionately and determine, is this really the person we're talking to? Is that really an image of the victim or one of the deceased involved with the case? And I think that's the interesting part about what Katherine and I have come up with the paranormal forensic team that can use all these different methods to get a body of information.
Okay. Have you or Katherine found that some groups don't like using that method of investigation at all? Do you find that they just completely disagree with it?
Well, the one investigation weekend that we had was very interesting, because it was people that we'd worked with before, and no sooner did we give them the case and the information, and Katherine did a fabulous. She gives a talk on forensics that's just blows you away. I mean, you sit there with your jaw on the floor listening, and once they got then they almost spontaneously broke up into two groups and went to different areas in the inn that we were stationed at, and we went back and forth, and I was listening to the discussions, and some were using pendulums to get more information. Others were discussing what their feelings were, what their psychic feelings were. So I thought that was really neat to see how they broke up into those groups. So I think it's kind of a natural thing that transpires.
Okay, and anything you want?
The way we did it was we fed information little by little,
right?
So that they wouldn't have everything at once, and then that some actually preferred digging into getting more information. They wanted to know things, whereas others preferred trying to find this information, more in psychic attunement. So it really was interesting watching the various participants and how they approach this.
And that method did two things. Number one, it's some every once in a while you see, yeah, that's what I thought. That's what we determined from the pendulum work. And then the other side was the people would say, no, that can't be. You just gave us, in other words, Katherine just gave them solid evidence that was found at the crime scene. And they say, no, that can't be because we came to this other conclusion. And, well, your conclusion was wrong. So your psychic conclusion was wrong. So that was a great learning experience for these people, I think, in terms of what we're trying to do.
And one of the weekends we actually had the coroner come, and he knows how to read autopsy reports, and he was able to actually add quite a bit more to that because people had ideas about what the death investigation would have been like and what the autopsy reports meant. And he was able to say, no, not really. Here's the way it really happens. And he added, I thought, a lot of authenticity to it as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. When are you guys going to have some more of these? I mean, this is something I want to attend. I mean, when are you guys going to have some more of these?
Todd, we have one coming up in April 6th through the 9th. And it's going to be in Gettysburg. And it's really a whole haunted crime scene investigation weekend. And it's pretty it's going to be pretty interesting. If anybody's interested, they can either call or look it up on our website, which is ghostsofgettysburg.com, or reservations at ghostsofgettysburg.com, and see some more information on it.
This is something I think all of us, in the research field should attend, because not only, do you learn a great deal, but you're able to apply it and learn from others' mistakes. I mean, this is something that, it's going to, it would help someone like me I'm on the fence about a lot of different things. I try to apply more critical thinking with any type of investigative work, any type of evidence I capture. And it's tough because of the bias. You're there, what happened, the history, should you know the history? All of these different questions come up in your head when you hear the evidence or see the evidence. So something like this would definitely help clear the air and lift that cloud to make your mind more open, yet cautious at the same time. I like that. It's a great thing. So thanks for putting that on.
Well, the thing I like about it is that it's doing something practical with this information. It's one thing to say, oh, listen, we got this voice on a recording, so that means there are ghosts. Yeah, well, yeah, we know that. That's been going on for years, But what this is doing is giving us some information gotten from the ghosts or from the spirit world. And to me, that's what's fascinating. Intelligent information that can help with something. So,
no, I like it. And that being said, we do have something here. Katherine, this would be a great one for you, a question coming in. Why do you think ghosts stay at crime scenes?
Oh, I think that the spirit world is a continuation of life. And so if a person was a stuck type of person, they're going to stay right where they are, because ghosts don't really need to be anchored anywhere in particular if they don't want to be. So I think the person may be pinned there because of the trauma of it, and because they're the type of person who is frozen by trauma.
And often it occurs in a familiar place, a home, their home, or whatever. And I think that, if in the spirit world you take some of your personality with you, which is a major theory, you hang out where you were most comfortable. At home, I'm going to Disney World. I don't know about you guys, but
some of them, the crime scenes are not in their home. We can talk about Fox Hollow Farm, for example, which was a farm owned by Herb Baumeister, who was a serial killer, and he was married, but he would bring young men there, kill them, and dump the remains on the property.
Yikes.
And he tortured them as well, and did various other things. And the bones were found. I mean, he had piles of bones. He would burn remains and whatnot. And people would see the image of a running young man. So that would be potentially a victim who was running away from him, but didn't get very far. So those are people who are not at their own home, but there they are stuck at that scene.
And it's because of the emotional trauma, the energy that was given off by an individual in extremis who was dying. So it's like Gettysburg. It's like why we have so many haunted places in Gettysburg.
Like tragic. A lot of those people in Gettysburg, a lot of the soldiers probably didn't even realize they were dead, right, Mark? I mean, they were in a running stance, running charge, and shot. It
happened so quickly they were not aware that they were dead, and here all of a sudden is this burst of emotion, and it's embedded basically in the physical surroundings.
Yeah, that makes sense. And another one coming in here, what equipment, what equipment used in a forensic investigation would also be used in paranormal investigations?
Well, the voice analysis, certainly, photography of all kinds. One of the things that I wrote about in Haunted Crime Scenes was something called painting with light, which we use in forensics for night work. And it actually can be used to fake a ghost photo if you want to, because of the way the camera and lighting all work. But sometimes in a crime scene, if you're out in the woods and you don't have any light, you're going to have to improvise. And this technique of painting with light will do it. Same thing could be done in a paranormal investigation. So both of those would certainly work. Voice recorders would work in both. I don't know, any kind of documentation, because most crime scenes have to be documented. And then you would do stuff for reconstruction, similar to what you would do if you're doing a paranormal investigation, meaning how did things occur? In what order did they occur? Who was involved? Was there a body dump site that's different from the murder site? So all of those things would be considerations in both types of investigations.
Mark, anything to add? I mean, there's differences as well. You don't see a police officer running around with an EMF meter or using the latest Ghost Speak app. I mean, it's not something you see out there.
No. But no, I agree with Catherine. Those things, they would cross over definitely. And I think maybe as important, it would be the protocols that you use. In other words, you use rubber gloves at a crime scene. You don't need rubber gloves in a paranormal investigation, but you certainly need to do things like don't smoke when you're taking photographs, be aware of your surroundings, immediately take in, what's there in your mind, take a mental photograph, take other photographs of it. And then as you start to go into it a little bit more, you can kind of, fill in the blanks. Okay, I think we should start trying to get some EVP from the site. and maybe some remote viewing and that type of thing. But no, it's the techniques and the protocols are very, very similar in both cases of a paranormal investigation and also of a crime scene investigation.
Yeah. I could also add from the digital world fraud analysis. Seeing if somebody's faking a photo or faking recordings or somehow corrupting them, adding things in, altering them in some way. So you would certainly want to have some expertise in digital analysis.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it. Let's face it. Technology is leaps and bounds ahead of what it used to be. As far as video, you can now crop things into video, Photoshop, even, all the audio software out there. You can manipulate so many things, and it's so genuine. This CGI, that computer generated, it's crazy on how real that looks. You have people, and I know social media is the mecca of all these things, but you have these videos where it shows the Earth spinning in the background, and they're oh my goodness, they're actually believing this is real. It's something that looks completely impossible. So it's crazy things. Again, people not using common sense, like we talked about at the beginning. Wow. You guys stay tuned. More coming up. We've got some final questions coming in here. I'm trying to get to all those you guys asked, so thank you for being patient. A lot of great things. A lot of you are asking questions because, as you're stating, they're being answered before you ask it. I like that, too. So more Haunted Voices Radio coming up. You guys stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Your Monday nights just got better. Tune in to ParatalkRadio.com. We are your paranormal talk. On the air, on the web, and in the field. We have guests from all over the paranormal world. We discuss ghosts, hauntings, Bigfoot, UFOs, and more. Check us out on Facebook Live on Monday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern at Facebook.com/ParatalkRadio. Remember, wherever there is darkness, there is always the light. ParatalkRadio.com.
If you've ever wondered what your dog, cat, bird, or any other animal is thinking or trying to tell you, now's the time to crack their code. Make this year the year you learn telepathic animal communication and begin using the intuitive and psychic abilities we all have to connect with other species. The free website Speak Good Human is the perfect place to start. Speak Good Human is the internet's largest free animal communication practice site. It features tips, advice, how-tos, and more than 100 animals ready to help you practice and build your skills through telepathic conversation. And each February and August, you can join the thousands of other learners worldwide for the Animal Communication Practice Challenge, when you'll get daily encouragement, inspiration, and camaraderie as you pursue your dream of talking with animals. Get in on the conversation at www.talktoanimals.weebly.com. That's talktoanimals.weebly.com. Or Google Speak Good Human. Not only will your companion animals thank you, but you'll finally be able to hear it.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has delivered a one-of-a-kind reading experience, covering everything from psychics, UFOs, paranormal investigations, and more. To subscribe, visit fatemag.com or call 828-702-3032. That's 828-702-3032. Subscribe and find your true reports of the strange and unknown at fatemag.com.
"47 minutes past the hour. You're listening to Haunted Voices Radio Live right here on letstalkradio.net. All of you, my goodness, kudos. Kudos to all of you listening to the live broadcast and your participation in the chat room and that, and abroad through Twitter. Oh my goodness. You're loving the show, and that's what we want. That's why we had these two on, because I couldn't think of a better better crew to learn this information from than me. Mark and Catherine, my goodness, they've been in the field a long time. They've been there, done that, a lot of these things. They've learned from the mistakes, which hopefully a lot of you got this from the program. And if you miss any of it, feel free. Download it free of charge. letstalkradio.net, iTunes, Google Play Music, iHeartRadio. All those outlets are there for you, because we know it's tough to listen to a live broadcast sometimes. It's really tough. A lot of us have hectic schedules. That's why we do that for you. So if you want to hear more from Dr. Katherine Ramsland, Mark Nesbitt, in the archive, all the questions, everything's going to be right there. Untouched, unedited. That's why it's called an archive, not a podcast. That's what we do here. We're old school. Now, some final questions here coming in. And one of them was addressed to Catherine. I want to get this one out there. This is great. This is great. This one's great. And one of them is, Catherine, do you ever think there will be a definite proof that ghosts exist?
To quote Fox Mulder, I want to believe. And what I mean by that, like him on the X-Files, is that he saw enough to believe there was something and it kept him going and looking and perfecting ways to find an answer to his question about aliens. And I think the same thing for me. I've seen enough and heard enough to think that there's certainly some credibility to the stories. And as we keep perfecting the instruments, one of these things is going to confirm for us that this is true.
I like that. That is a great answer. That is a great answer. Now, let's see here. We've got another one coming in from Twitter. What crime scene would you do an investigation at? If you could pick a favorite crime scene, this is for both of you, I'm taking it. Which would be a crime scene that either one of you two would want to investigate?
Go ahead, Mark.
Well, the one that I'm, and we've already did a little bit on this, is the crime scene. One of the crime scenes down in Savannah, Georgia, which would have been the subject of the book Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, and of course that would be the Danny Hansford murder and the surrounding incidents, and of course Savannah's filled with haunted crime scenes, but that would be because we've already done something on that. I would love to dive into that even more than what we have already. But Catherine won't get on her hip boots and wander around in the Savannah River like we want her to.
Yes, I will. Once I get that map, I will.
You need the map. We were promised a map by one of the participants, by one of the psychics who got that from one of the victims there. So, but he's playing games with us.
Has the upper hand, maybe.
Or the psychic is.
Yeah, that could be too. Yeah.
What about you, Catherine?
I have already done Lizzie Borden, and I did that extensively, and did it as part of something I was doing with one of the FBI profilers. But then I also did the ghost investigation, and that was very interesting. But if I had a choice, it would be Jack the Ripper.
Ooh. That would be an eye-opener for sure.
It is, and everything there has really changed a lot because of building and whatnot. It's not like you can get into any of the locations the way they once were.
Right.
But with ghosts, that doesn't really matter. I would say that I'm the ripperologist of the Lehigh Valley.
Ripperologist.
And I've been over there. Jack the Ripper is my thing, and so I would really love to do that investigation.
Nice. That would be nice. That would be nice. And let's see, final one here. Will there be more books in the series? It must be somebody that's read them. They want to know if there's going to be more.
We've talked about doing an international one. We haven't yet moved in that direction, but I suppose when we do our Haunted Crime Scene weekend in April, we're going to discuss where we want to go from here.
Okay. Now, my goodness, time has flown by with this program. My goodness. I can't believe how fast it's gone. Now, that just means we're going to have you two back for more in-depth conversation like that. It's just, you two have been amazing. And I can't thank you enough again for educating all of us tonight on haunted crime scenes, the do's and don'ts. You guys have some great words of wisdom. Hopefully, people abide by them, use them, apply them, unlearn them. That would definitely be something to do out there in the field. Now, we just have a few minutes, but I want you guys to be able to get out, anything you have coming up, any conferences, books, websites, contact information, all of that. And ladies first, Catherine, we'll start with you. Go ahead. The mic is yours.
All right. Well, we've talked about the Haunted Crime Scenes Weekend, but I'm also doing one in August called the Writers Police Academy, where people can go learn from investigators, from detectives, from SWAT teams, from dog handlers, et cetera, how to do these things. And they don't need to be professionals. They can just sign up for the weekend. It's called the Writers Police Academy. And it's really an amazing, this is their 10-year anniversary. It's an amazing experience for people to get to do hands-on stuff. So if they're interested in investigation, that's really a great place to learn it.
Okay, Mark?
I'm writing this down. Writers Police Academy. Okay, I'll be in touch, Catherine.
Yeah, you mean both.
That's really cool. We have some things coming up. Of course, our Ghosts of Gettysburg tours just started this past week, and we're open 7 days a week now. And so those are always fun. We've added a new tour last year of the Confederate side of the town, and that goes on Saturday afternoons or Saturday evenings. So we're open, and the place to make your reservations or to get or to at least find where you can make a reservation is ghostsofgettysburg.com. That's plural, ghostsofgettysburg.com. And if you look that up, you can see also the books are available through that and other things. And I also want to emphasize, since we're talking about it all night tonight, the Haunted Crime Scene Investigation Weekend, which is April 6th through the 9th, that weekend, Friday through Sunday. You will stay at the brand new hotel in Gettysburg, which overlooks the fields of Pickett's Charge, and we will go through the crime with you. We will start with teaching techniques for paranormal forensic investigations. Catherine will give her fantastic presentation on forensics and biases and that type of thing that is really that's worth the price of admission right there just to hear her. And that's coming up on, as I said, the 6th through the 9th. Once again, ghostsofgettysburg.com. You can have a link that will take you right to it. So other than that, Todd, this was fun tonight.
Wow.
Very much.
You two are amazing. And thank you again for taking time out of your schedules to come on here. We cannot wait to have you back again soon. A lot of great information. And anything you guys need, you let us know. We're going to get it out there to the people. This is information that they have to know. Thank you both very much.
Thank you, Todd.
Thank you for having us.
You bet. Have a great week. And there they were, Katherine Ramsland and, of course, Mark Nesbitt. And you can find all that information, like you said, ghostofgettysburg.com. And, of course, we're going to have those two back. You guys love them very much. And that's what it's all about, is getting the information out there. Speaking of information, want to get you the lineup coming up here this week on Let's Talk Radio. You can find all the schedule right there, letstalkradio.net. But live tomorrow night, you've got Paranormal Experienced with host Kat Hobson. That's going to be coming up 8 Eastern, 7 Central. And, of course, Friday, you're going to be having Fate Radio. I'll be hosting that 9 Eastern, 8 Central. And Ghost Talk Radio will be before that. It'll be a replay from last week. Shelley and Vincent doing international ghost accounts. Very interesting program right there. And, of course, Sunday night, you've got A Gang of Girls Radio with host Ariel Grace, 8 Eastern, 7 Central. All right there at letstalkradio.net. You can see the full schedule, all the past programming. Be sure to check out the new website. Let us know what you think. And if you have a guest suggestion for Haunted Voices Radio or any of the programs here on Let's Talk Radio, you can email producer at letstalkradio.net. We'll get those where they need to be, and we'll get them booked for you. From all of us here, Haunted Voices Radio and letstalkradio.net, have a fantastic week. Thanks for joining us.